joining me from Hy-Vee, our favorite dietitian. We've got two of them, so they're both my favorite. But I've got Amy here today with us. Amy, welcome back to the show. Happy October. How are you doing today?
Yes, thank you. Happy October. I'm great. I'm loving this perfect fall weather we're having right now.
I know, like we've had such a kind of a weird summer. We had a lot of wet weekends, so I think we're getting treated to what seems to be a start of a really good fall season. And that takes us in a little bit into our conversation today. Are we talking about recipe modification? I asked you, how could we take something out of our favorite cookbook or our favorite recipe? You got all your favorite recipes, and they're just sometimes they're really too good, and they sit with you a little bit longer than they should. So taking that in mind, October is National Cookbook Month. So tell us a little bit about the month, and then we're going to talk about recipes.
Yes. So who knew October is National Cookbook Month? But what a great time, even with the change of seasons too, a really great time to maybe go find some new ideas to add to those kind of old favorites that you have to your, I always call it my rotation of my favorites that I kind of slot in on a regular basis. And one thing I work with clients a lot on is if you have a recipe and you want to start making it, but maybe it doesn't exactly fit with what your health goals are, you do not have to take that recipe at face value. We can tweak it a little bit depending on what your goals are to make it fit a little bit better. So, a little bit of modification can really take something from maybe not really fitting in with your health goals, whatever guidelines you're trying to follow, and really make that a great fit for you.
Yeah, and before we dive into the taking on some of those goals and strategies, just in general, I think where do dietitians find good recipes? Because they think that's always important. Like where do you guys look for these things?
Yes. Well, one place you can start, it is Cookbook Month, is actually go to the library. This is something I think people don't necessarily think that you'll find there. But, to have to buy a lot of cookbooks can add up pretty quickly. So if you're really not sure, that's a great place to start. Go to the cookbook section, maybe check a couple out. You can pull by cuisine type. Maybe there's a celebrity chef you like, you want to try some of their things. So that's certainly a good place to start. Hy-Vee Seasons Magazine and Hy-Vee Online is a great place to look. And then lots of online sites as well. So, some of the sites I really like, in addition to Hy-Vee, that have dietitians on staff, will be like Eating Well, Cooking Light, Super Healthy Kids is another one I really like as well. So those are kind of some of my favorite places to go out and find some new recipes.
There you go. Now the insights, folks. Here now where they're finding these great recipes. So, and of course, you can always schedule an appointment with Amy to talk about her favorites. I've always asked her after the show, so I get to do that. But you should too. Sign up and do that. But let's talk about some of the things that we could take. So the first one is to increase the intake of vegetables to a recipe. I think this one. There's a lot of it. You've said a lot of some of this in the past, but vegetables can really perk up the meal.
Yes, and I feel like the goal of increasing vegetables is something a lot of people are working on. I hear a lot of the feedback I get from clients is I'm really good at eating fruit. I'm not great at eating vegetables, and so that's something I work with people on a lot. Of how do we increase that? So one thing I always suggest to people is start with foods or meals that you already love and find a way to add vegetables in. And so, taking your favorite recipes is a great way to do that. So maybe your recipe already has vegetables in it. You could easily double the amount that it's calling for. If it calls for a cup of vegetables, add 2. If it calls for one type of vegetable, maybe add a couple extra in so that you're getting those in. And another thing you can do is use vegetables in different forms. So, if you're making a stir fry, maybe using some cauliflower rice to blend in with the regular rice, or using vegetable noodles to blend in with a pasta dish, so that you're taking something you already know you like and then just adding that one little extra ingredient in.
And is it okay to, because I think of timing of this as I'm working this through my head, I'm like, gosh, I really want this to be a speedy meal. So when you're saying vegetables, that could be related to frozen or fresh, right? We could
Yes.
mix in
Yeah.
either or.
Yes. Yeah. One of my favorite things to do, if I'm making a pasta dish and I'm using like a penne pasta, frozen green beans kind of mimic that shape and texture of that pasta. So, throw some frozen green beans in the microwave and mix them in. And yes, it can be a really quick solution. It doesn't have to add extra time to your prep. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Next one, and I think kind of a curious one for me, it would be is reducing saturated fat in some of these. So this is going to be a tough one, I would think. And you have some talk or some points here maybe on the protein.
Yeah, so saturated fat, that's a concern if you're trying to follow a more heart healthy diet, trying to cut back on some of that saturated fat. And saturated fat is generally found in animal products. So protein is a good place to start. So, as you're choosing those meats for your recipes, trying to get leaner options. So, if it's a ground product, going with a 93.7 ground beef versus an 80/20 or something like that. Another thing you can do, and I like to do this quite a bit, is I will replace some of the animal protein in a recipe with plant protein. So a great example of this is tacos or taco salad or anything like that. I will replace half of the ground meat with black beans. And so you just mix those two together and then just add your seasoning. That's not only going to reduce your saturated fat, that also increases your fiber, which is a good one as well. And then another place where we find saturated fat is in eggs. So it's mostly in those egg yolks. So using egg whites or just using, if you're going to make a 3-egg omelet, use one whole egg and then 2 egg whites to fill that in. So again, you're essentially getting the same finished product, you're just tweaking it a little bit to get that saturated fat content down.
Yeah, I think that those are really good examples. And we eat a lot of meat here in Wisconsin, and of course the nation does. So I think that's a good one, easy one I think to look at. Next to, as we're running out of time, and I do want to get to a couple of recipes here, but reducing sodium and increasing fiber. You talk about increasing fiber all the time, but sodium is the one that I brought up to you when we're going to talk about a chicken noodle soup. But the sodium and reducing that is so important and can be done pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, with the sodium, and that's one I get a lot too from customers, is really just finding either ingredients that you can substitute that are going to be lower sodium for things. And we'll talk more specifics when we talk about the soup, but then also finding other ways to flavor. So leaning more on herbs, garlic, ginger, all of those things that are going to carry a lot of flavor that won't add that salt to the recipe.
Yeah, and I know we're going over, we could spend a whole day just on salt. Maybe where's the salt segment is what we'll call it when we go there. And let's talk about some examples. So trying to apply this method here. Chicken noodle soup, a staple. It's getting a little bit cool out, and all of us grew up with a canned soup, and that's still good. We still deny that it's not good to eat, but maybe reducing sodium here in a soup is really good, and adding vegetables will work.
Yes. So the first thing with soup is your broth, and that's usually where most of that sodium is going to be. And you can get a no salt added broth, but it's going to be a pretty drastic change from if you're used to eating canned soup. So what I like to do is combine half no salt added broth and then half reduced sodium broth. So you're still getting that sodium down, but it's not going to be such a drastic change that you're not going to want to eat the soup after you've cut and cooked. Spend all that time. Not want to eat it.
That's what I said. I'm like, oh man, I think of all the great recipes I have, and that I replace one salt with a different type of salt, and you're just getting in trouble. But you're right, there's still flavor to be had there, and yes. It's easy to be done. How about quickly lasagna? Because pasta is just such a great thing, but so bad on some levels. But you can change up a good pasta, and you have a good lasagna option here to talk about. So tell us how to make our lasagna just a little bit more flavorful and healthier, if those even can be done.
Yeah, so one thing I like to do with lasagna is, typically it's a noodle, meat mixture, cheese mixture, add a layer of vegetables in there. So things that would work easily in there, maybe some sauteed spinach would be good. You could roast some red peppers, really any kind of vegetable that you like, just roast it and then add that in as a layer to that lasagna. You could even take a layer of noodles out and replace it with that layer of vegetables. So again, you're still basically having the same dish, but now we've just kind of upped the nutrition with those, 1 to 2 extra layers of vegetables in there.
Yeah, and they're almost like fun hacks to these recipes, but great information. I know we didn't have a lot of time to get to everything today, but this is great. And if you want to learn more or just get in contact with Hy-Vee on helping you out or any dietitian, how can you do so, Amy?
You can go to Hy-Vee.com/health, and we have a dietitian page there. You can search by dietitian. You can go to the store that you normally visit and find the dietitians there. And then we have all of our information about our nutrition services on there as well. So check it out. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. We're here to help. So if you need help tweaking a recipe, we can help you do that.